May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just bless all of you, increase you. People ask me to talk about Murabit al Hajj. It's still very raw for me, but I will say that I feel it's like one of the greatest blessings of my life to have actually met him, to have sat with him, to have learned from him, benefited from him. That I can honestly say, the Arabs say, "Ma ra'at ayni mithluhu," my eyes never seen the likes of him. I really, arguably, I don't think he ever saw the likes of himself. He was just a really extraordinary, unique human being. And I think one of the most extraordinary things about him is that he was completely hidden in the middle of the Sahara Desert. I mean, he really was not interested in any kind of fame or notoriety, and he once told me, he said, I put a big barrier between me and the people of dunya, which is the Sahara, because he was out. He was not living. A lot of people moved into the towns and villages. He stayed out in the desert despite incredible hardship. But one of the things that's really been amazing is that all over the world he's been recognized. I mean, people in Saudi Arabia, these big scholars of the Saudi tradition, the Hanbali Salafi tradition, tweeted out about him. Shaykh Salih al-Maghamisi tweeted out that some of the big ulama in Saudi Arabia wanted to go visit him because they'd heard about him. And this is a sign that if you're practicing like Zarruqi tasawwuf, nobody's going to criticize you for your tasawwuf. I mean, it's a real proof, because he was a Zarruqi in his minhaj. I mean, he didn't do anything, no innovation, nothing. He really was a Sunni scholar. Even, he was Ash'ari in his creed, but even the Salafis that I met who knew he was Ash'ari had immense respect for him. So, I was fortunate. We visited him several times over the years and went out with people. And it was very important for him to serve people. He was very, very diligent about hospitality, and very generous. But his whole thing was, his life was teaching from the moment he opened his eyes. And there are more than one person that sees, but I saw him doing dhikr in his sleep, in a deep sleep. And I actually, alhamdulillah, for the first 3 months that I was there, he had me stay in his tent with him. So I actually slept on the same, it's called a khatta, it's like a bamboo bed that they have. They're very big, but he had me sleep on the same thing. So he did dhikr all the time. He's always had dhikr on his tongue. And he was a real zahid, I mean, a true zahid. But really a great loss to them, because these people are a great blessing to have, just alive. But the other thing that's very interesting to me is that the only books that he wrote, the only things that he wrote on, he wrote a very comprehensive book on Arabic grammar. And then he wrote books on diction, on vocabulary. And then he wrote a refutation of people who don't follow madhab, and he wrote a refutation of anthropomorphists, and literalists, people that took the Quran totally literally. So those are the things that he focused on. But I thought about why he wrote a book on grammar. I really think it's just, that's the starting place. We have to get back to language. We have to get back to communication. Just learning how to speak with one another and communicate. It all begins with grammar. Civilization begins with grammar. You don't need grammar to be primitive people, but a civilization has to have grammar. So that's where it begins. And Nietzsche, who was a very interesting character, Nietzsche said, I fear we still believe in God because we still have grammar. And that's a very profound statement, because grammar is what enables meaning, and meaning is what enables us to think about God. In a meaningless world, God has no meaning. But As long as you have language and meaning, God is there, either in the background or the foreground, depending on your perspective. But He will always be there with meaning. And that's why we have to restore meaning. Right? For all these people that say it's all meaningless, we're just animals. We're not just animals. There's a significant difference between us and the rest of them. There's no conferences of donkeys right now sitting around at tables with pens and pencils discussing, the tribulation of humans and their oppression of animals. Right? That's all imaginative fiction. So, very meaningful. Also, just